Gretchen Rubin, welcome to the podcast.
I'm so happy to be talking to you.
I am such a fan of yours. I love your work. I will tell you later all about how I tried to emulate the Happiness Project for a project that I was working on. It's just such
Oh,
a great, such an amazing piece of work and a really good example of just truly good writing and a great idea that you've made into
oh,
such a bigger thing than even what it was, which I also admire. But before we
thank
even
you.
get into all that, I want to
Yeah.
I have a book out right now that's about origin stories of writers
Mm.
and you have such a really interesting origin story. I wish I had met you or talked to you before I put the book out because I would have loved to have included your story in here. But can you share with us the origin story of how you got into writing? Because it's very unusual and some might be surprised at where you started and where you are now.
All right. So, yes, it's kind of unusual. So,
Yeah.
just as a little bit of backstory about me, is something that has always happened to me ever since I was young, is that I will get intensely interested in a subject and I'll do a lot of research and sort of take notes on it. And so
Right.
this is just like something that's kind of in my nature. So anyway, I didn't know what to do with myself after college. I was good at research and
Where'd
writing.
you
I
go to
wanted to keep
college, by the way?
Yale.
Yeah. Oh, I've heard
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, my father was a very happy lawyer. I thought, oh, I'll go to law school. It'll keep my options open. I can always change my mind later. So I went to law school kind of for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
So went to law school. I did very well in law school, and I ended up clerking on the Supreme Court for Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor.
Wow.
So I had no thought that I would become a writer myself because I thought of writers at that point as being either playwrights, poets, novelists,
Hmm.
or journalists, or like academic writers.
Right.
And at that time, people didn't really talk about creative nonfiction the way they do now. And so I didn't really, and I was a person who always read nonfiction, always read fiction. Now I read a lot of nonfiction, but growing up, I always read a lot of fiction, almost all fiction. So I just didn't see, I just didn't even think about it as something that was sort of relevant to me. But when I was clerking, I was out one day, on my lunch break, and I because I do have this kind of, I get intensely interested in different wacky subjects. I will often ask myself rhetorical questions. And so one rhetorical question was, what am I interested in that everyone in the world is interested in? And I
Yeah.
thought, well, power, money, fame, sex. And it was like
Uh-huh.
power, money, fame, sex. It was like this one big subject in my mind. And I immediately became absolutely preoccupied. And I would just do so much research in all my free time, after work, on the weekends, all about this subject, which to me, everything felt very related:
Yeah.
power, money, fame, sex.
Well, you're
So
in
I was just
Washington.
yeah, exactly. I have so many great Washington examples. So
Right.
I was just doing this and doing this for fun, just like this was just kind of the thing that I do. And then finally it occurred to me, this is the kind of thing a person would do if they were going to write a book. And then I
Mm.
thought, well, maybe I could write that book. And I literally went to the bookstore and got a book called something like How to Write and Sell Your Nonfiction Book Proposal. And then I followed the directions.
Oh
And
my
that
God.
became my first book, Power, Money, Fame, Sex, A User's Guide.
And you found a publisher and everything. It wasn't like you found it not self-published at this time. Yeah.
No, I got no.
Because
So I had to get an agent first, right? And that's even harder. I mean, I think the big
that is.
secret is it's harder to get an agent than it is to get published.
That's so true.
So that was a whole thing. I had to write a proposal. I had to do all. Yeah, that makes it sound very easy, and it was not easy.
Oh
But
my.
that project did end up becoming my first published book.
So now, once that happened, did you stop your internship on the with Sandra Day O'Connor and decide I'm now going to be a writer, not a lawyer, despite going
Well,
to
I
law
did.
school?
I did take one more job, which was to be the chief, one of the chief counsels to the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, which sounds really boring, but was actually a super fun, interesting job. But I was continuing to do the research on the book, and also to do the research on like how do you become a published author, which is itself like a whole huge project. And then at that time, my husband and I were living in Washington, D.C., and we decided to move back to New York City. And so I had to decide, would I get a law job in New York City or not? And
Mm.
I decided, I was like, look, I would rather fail as a writer than succeed as a lawyer at this point. I can't think of a law job that I want.
Yeah.
I want to write this book. This is the time. Let me try it and either succeed or fail. But I was afraid that if I took another legal job at that point, I would just be so on that track that realistically I would not be able to step off of it. And
Yeah.
so when we moved to DC, we met in law school, Yale
Uh-huh.
Law School, and my husband switched from law to finance, and started going full time, trying to get an agent and trying to get a book deal.
And that was the Money, Power, Sex. That was that book. Yeah.
That was Money, Power, Fame, Sex. Yeah. And
And
people often say that my books sound like they're all disconnected, my earlier books and my later books, but they're all about human nature. So to me, they all feel very much of a kind.
yeah,
They feel
no,
very related.
for sure, for sure. So that talk to me a little bit about the genesis of the Happiness Project, because that's really what put you on the map.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about where that all came from.
Well, like many people, I worked very hard for 10 years to become an overnight sensation. Many people have no idea that I wrote 3 books before I wrote the Happiness
Isn't that
Project.
amazing? Right.
Yeah.
So that's
Well,
good to know, right? Okay, listener, writers that are listening, people struggle.
yes.
There's a struggle. You always,
Yes.
when your favorite writers, it always just seems like they just fell into this kind of amazing career, but you don't know the sort of back. So it's nice to know that there was 10
Yes,
years.
you
Not
don't-
nice
and
for you, but for us to know that there was 10
Yeah,
years. of
you
struggle.
don't know the failure and the things that
Yeah.
kind of never come to be. So with the Happiness Project, and here's an example of failure. Okay, so I wrote Power, Money, Fame, Sex. Then I wrote a short, unconventional biography of Winston Churchill, and then I wrote a short, unconventional biography along the same line of John F. Kennedy, called 40 Ways to Look at Winston Churchill, 40 Ways to Look at JFK. And I love these books. So now, if your book does not succeed in the marketplace, what your editor says to you is, your book didn't find its audience. So the thing about the JFK book was it didn't find its audience, which was sad. But as I was finishing the JFK book, after I had turned it in, done all the copy editing and everything, and I was waiting for the book to actually hit the shelves, I had this downtime on my hands. Because now it's like we're all in constant motion, but at that time it was before all the tools that we have now, and so there was sort of this period where I couldn't really start a new book project because my JFK book hadn't even come out yet. So I was on a crowded city bus in the pouring rain here in New York City, and I do ask myself these rhetorical questions, and I ask myself, what do I want from life anyway? And I thought,
Right.
well, I want to be happy. And I realized I didn't spend any time thinking about whether I was happy, if I could be happier. Can you even make yourself happier? Is that even possible? I ran out to the library, got a giant stack of books the next day, science, memoirs, any novels, anything I could, and started trying to just research this question. Can you make yourself happier? And if so, how? And then at a certain point, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. There were so many things that I wanted to learn about and so many things that I wanted to try myself in my own life that I thought, I should turn this into a book. Because on that bus ride, I said to myself, I should have a happiness project. And so that's why the book has that title, because in that first moment, that's how I conceived of it for myself. It started out just for me, and then it turned into a book.
And you in this book, you sort of make yourself a human guinea pig, right? Like you try all these different happiness techniques.
Yes.
So this is the inspiration you gave me. So I had an idea. I've struggled with anxiety. I'm a New Yorker, right? I've struggled with anxiety my whole life. And my idea was I want to do a happiness project for anxiety where I would try all these different techniques to get rid of my anxiety, right? Like from petting llamas to doing, traveling to study breathing techniques in Austria with, the great breathing experts, these kinds of things, right? Got an agent. That was difficult, but I did get an agent. She was very excited about this book. We went out with it and I didn't sell it. So, whatever. I was so inspired by you and I still am happy that I found you as a result of going on that anxiety mission. My anxiety has since gotten a little bit better. You would think my anxiety would be worse after not selling that book, but I didn't sell it. But it was a good exercise. And I sometimes
what was your
wonder,
working title? I'm always so interested in people's
oh my
working
God,
titles.
what was it? All right, I have to look it up because now it's been 3 years and it was a good one. It was called, anyway, I'll look it up and then we'll come back to that.
Okay,
It's
because
embarrassing.
I love
can't remember
titles
it.
for some reason.
I know, and it was given that I'm a journalist, I spent a lot of time thinking about that, and my agent, a woman by the name of Kirsten, she was my editor when I worked at Glamour magazine, and so we kind of obsessed over the title, of course, which now I can't remember because that's
No,
really bad.
probably because you had so many different
I
iterations you can't
know. I
remember. That's been
know.
like typed over too many times.
I know. It's hilarious. I'll find it. But anyway, I know. Yeah. So anyway, okay. So you do the Happiness Project. Now, the interesting thing is the Happiness Project is a tremendous success. Like you sell millions of copies of this book. It goes like I'm sure it's like in many different languages, et cetera. It kind of puts you in a different place now in your career. But you did a really interesting thing, and I don't know if it just organically happened or if you thought it out. It's like you made that the success of that book. You didn't just rest on the success of that book. You kind of made it into other things. Like it became a podcast, and it became like you had lots of different revenue streams, I guess, or different ways to kind of capture an audience using that idea. How did that happen? Like, how did you think about that? Because I think that's so smart in sort of this day and age.
Well, I wish I had done it strategically so I could take credit for it, but no, it all happened like just sort of very organically. And first of all, I want to say one of the things that's really lucky for me is that the subject of happiness really lends itself to all these things, much more than like if I was writing my biography of Winston Churchill. That was a book that I loved. It's a subject that's extraordinarily fascinating and compelling, but it doesn't lend itself to the kind of expansion that you've described.
Yeah.
So I was really lucky that with happiness, and the thing about happiness is it's everything. It's relationships, it's exercise, it's clearing clutter, it's color, it's so many things can play into it. And so it feels coherent and that it's like a clear subject, and yet you can take it in so many directions. It doesn't go stale.
Right.
There's always new things. And I always, with every book, I've been so fortunate, I should knock wood. Every time I've finished a book, I see exactly the next book that I want to do. Like I see in my own research, like where I want to go. Like right when I wrote The Happiness Project, I kept asking myself, what are the universals? What is truly a universal idea? And I'm like, practically nothing is universal, a lot less than I would have thought. But one of the things that seemed practically universal is an idea of home. It's hard to be happy if you're not happy at home. So that's why I wrote Happier at Home. So all my books kind of lead one into the next one. With like taking it out into the world. So as I said, my JFK book did not reach its audience. And so I felt immensely frustrated because I thought there's so many people who I know are fascinated by JFK. They just don't even know about my book. If I could tell them about my book, maybe they would like to read it because I think they would. They just don't know about it because, at that time you were completely dependent on things like book reviews, television interviews, radio interviews. And that's what led me to have a blog, which now feels so retro. But
Right.
having a blog, and then it was part of the Happiness Project.
Now you might have a Substack. Like,
Yeah.
you were just
Okay.
taking advantage of the
Yes,
thing.
I'm
that
going to
was-
do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so, and that was, and I needed to do something novel and challenging for the purposes of the Happiness Project. It was one of the experiments that I ran. So I started the blog as part of the experiment. And I loved it. I loved being able to connect with an audience about ideas that were fascinating to me. And I could see what was interesting to people. I could see the questions that they had. People were giving me tremendous resources and examples. Like I just felt like the world was my research assistant. Like this was amazing. And then somebody came, they came to me and said, do you want a podcast? And I was like, heck yes. Like that's another way to connect with an audience that would be completely creatively different. I'd had a newsletter. I've had various newsletters over the years. Like I've been doing it for such a long time. So it's like gone through many different evolutions. Love that. I've always wanted to have products. Like I have an amazing idea for a journal, or I have this cool thing I want to create. Now I can do that. So I have been very fortunate that as these things have become more and more possible for sort of like the average person, you don't have to be Disney or, Penguin Random House to do these things. I'm lucky because I started early and then I've slowly, gradually added them as they've sort of become available to just sort of a regular person. I feel bad for people who are starting now when they're like, what? I am supposed to have an Instagram account, a Substack, a newsletter, products, a workbook, a YouTube channel, a speaking bureau agency. Should I be having retreats? Do I need t-shirts? Like, I need like a brand identity. And so I feel very fortunate that for me, all these things happen like step by step by step over time, very gradually. Because like none of them are that hard to do on their own. I mean, it's hard to do them well and it takes consistent work and all that. But if you're adding them gradually, it's a lot easier than like starting from scratch and thinking, okay, I'm supposed to have all these balls in the air. I just wrote a book. Isn't that enough?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many lessons to take away from your experience. I mean, one is I love that idea that you just didn't kind of rush into it. I think a lot of us might have like a little marketing plan they put up, like I'm going to do a YouTube and I'm going to do a website, I'm going to do a Substack, and it's like it's too much, especially if you're
Yes.
kind of one person doing this
Yes,
all.
it is.
I mean,
It
eventually,
is.
I'm sure you had a bit of you had some help, but
Very
you know,
late did I get a team. Now
right.
I do, and it's amazing. But for a very long time, it was just me, and then it was just like me and one other person who was fantastic. But yeah, it's hard when you're like, because all these things now have become so specialized and so professionalized. It's like, anyway, you feel like if I spend all my time on X, I could do it so well, but I have to do a lot of things kind of badly.
All right, brief, because I found the name of my book, and that
Ooh,
was going
what?
to drive me crazy. Okay, it was called Anxiety Attack: The Year I Tried Cannabis, Llamas, Sound Baths, and Sauerkraut to Rewire My Worry Brain.
I like it.
I
I
thought
think
it was
that's
good.
great.
I almost feel like the subtitle might be better than, and I'll tell you, I tried so many variations on like the anxiety, project, like so
Right.
many kind of the anxiety files, the anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't find it. Sometimes I think that, and I got, and I'm sure maybe this is kind of what happens to everybody. I got a lot of very positive. We went out to everybody. I got a lot of very positive responses, but the kind of common thread was, we don't think enough people this will resonate with a big enough audience.
I just think that's bonkers. Maybe you
I
should take
know.
it out again now. Now, I do
You
know,
guys
I
should.
don't know if you want to get into too much shop talk, but I do know that Andrea Peterson wrote a book called Anxious.
Hmm.
She's a journalist and she wrote about sort of like the science of anxiety and like
Oh,
how
that's
she's a very
interesting.
anxious person and tried it. So if they had said to you, like, hey, this book just came out or is about to come out, and we
That's true.
think that they're
Maybe,
too similar, I could understand that. But if you're saying, like, oh, I don't think enough people identify as anxious and are looking for ways
I
to
know. I
get
was like,
less
are you?
anxious, I'm like, where have you been?
Right, and it's like, are you in New York City right now? Like, I mean, it's like it's like the common language of New Yorkers
No,
is,
no,
is
but not
anxiety.
even New York. Like I'm
I
from
know.
Kansas City, and I mean,
That's true.
believe everybody's talking about it. Maybe take it out again and be like, "Hey, if I was prescient, but everybody
Yeah.
else is now caught up with me," because I think that. Well, and then you look at like how you said cannabis. I mean, look at how psychedelics have like caught fire in terms of anxiety prevention and PTSD and all that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if you can take a book
Maybe I'll
out
take.
again, but
I don't know if I
I
can take that again, and but it was an interesting exercise, and I
I think
and
it
I
sounds great.
well, thank you. I probably should have asked for your opinion before I even started putting it out there. But anyway, all right, moving on. Now, I promise I'm going to get to your current book because I'm super excited to talk about that as a parent and somebody who can totally relate. But I do want to talk about the personality tendencies because this
Yes.
was another big thing that
Yes.
you did, and I love things like this. And so but first of all, maybe better for you to explain what they are than
Okay.
for me to try to explain it to the listeners. So,
Okay. So we're talking about the four
the
tendencies, which
four
is a
tendencies.
personality framework that I feel I invented it, but I actually feel like I discovered it, like an archaeologist or something. When I was writing Better Than Before, which is my book about how to make or break habits, because I was trying to make sense of like sort of odd patterns within habit formation that I couldn't understand, like why people sometimes could successfully change habits and then other times they couldn't, and I was trying to make sense of that. And that led me to this four tendencies framework, which divides the world into upholders, questioners, obligers, and rebels. So I'll briefly describe it now. I'm so happy to hear that it strikes a chord with you.
Oh, for
But if
sure.
people want to take a quiz, which will give them an answer and like a little report on how to think about their tendency, just go to GretchenRubin.com and there's a quiz there that's free. And like, I don't know, 3.5 million people have taken the quiz.
I've taken it a few times. I took it again this morning because I just wanted to make sure I was still the same thing, and I still am the same thing. Which
Oh, I
I'll
can't wait to
reveal in a
hear what
minute.
you are, but don't tell me
Yeah.
yet. Don't tell me yet.
Okay, I want to.
Okay, so yes, this is, are you an upholder, a questioner, obliger, rebel? And once you do this, they're so easy to spot. Like we could do
Yeah.
Better Call Saul, we could do Game of Thrones, we could do The Office. So what it's looking at is something that seems very boring and dry, but is actually really juicy, which is how you respond to expectations. And we all face two kinds of expectations: outer expectations, like a work deadline; inner expectations, like a New Year's resolution. So depending on whether you meet or resist outer and inner expectations, that makes you an upholder, a questioner, an obliger, or a rebel. So upholders are people who readily meet both outer and inner expectations. They meet the work deadline, they keep the New Year's resolution without much fuss. They want to know what other people expect from them, but their expectations for themselves are just as important. They tend to love calendars, to-do lists. They don't need a lot of accountability or supervision or deadlines. Like, they're very kind of self-executing. They can be rigid. So their motto is, discipline is my freedom. Then there are questioners. Questioners question all expectations. They'll do something if they think it makes sense. They insist on reasons, justifications, rationale. They love efficiency. Right. They love customization. So what they're doing is they're making everything an inner expectation. If something makes sense to them, they will do it no problem. If it doesn't make sense to them, they will push back. So they make everything an inner expectation. So their motto is, if you convince me why, I'll comply. Then there are obligers. This is the biggest tendency for both men and women. Like, you either are an obliger, you have many obligers in your life. Obligers readily meet outer expectations, but they struggle to meet inner expectations. So these are people who say, why is it that I can keep my promises to other people, but I can't keep my promises to myself? Why can't I make time for self-care? Why can't I make myself a priority? It's because you cannot meet an inner expectation unless you have outer accountability if you were an obliger. So if you were an obliger and you were feeling frustrated by this, it's very straightforward. You need outer accountability even to meet an inner expectation. If you want to exercise more, work out with a trainer, work out with a friend who's going to be annoyed if you don't show up, take your dog for a run who's going to be so disappointed if she doesn't get to go for a run, raise money for a charity, think of your duty to be a role model. There's a million ways to create outer accountability, but if you're an obliger, this is what you need. They make great leaders, great team members, great friends, great family members. These are the people that go the extra mile. They're the ones that team up the most easily with the other three tendencies. But they're frustrated because of this pattern. So their motto is, their motto is, you can count on me, and I'm counting on you to count on me.
I like that.
And then finally, rebels. Rebels resist all expectations, outer and inner alike. They want to do what they want to do in their own way, in their own time. They can do anything they want to do, anything they choose to do. But if you ask or tell them to do something, they are very likely to resist. And typically they don't tell themselves what to do. Like, they don't say, I'm going to get up at 10 a.m. on Saturday and work on my novel, because just the idea that, like, they're supposed to do something at 10 a.m. is going to annoy them.
That annoys them.
So their motto is, you can't make me, and neither can I. So those are the four tendencies.
And I know all those people.
Yes,
right.
yes, they're
We
all
all know
around
them.
us.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Okay.
I feel like I'd hate to, I feel like I'm so boring because I'm an obliger.
Okay.
And
Some of the best people are obligers.
Well, thank you for telling me that. I feel like I kind of wanted to be an upholder because I felt like, it's funny because I'm an obliger and I was like, I'm totally an obliger because I definitely need external, resources or external impetus to get me to do things. Deadlines, for example, set by other people, not by myself, right?
Yes.
But I don't think my wife would agree I'm obliger. She probably thinks that I don't listen a lot to her.
Can I explain why that
Yeah,
is?
can you explain that? Yes, please.
Yes, and this is a really important thing to know, is that often sweethearts do not provide accountability for a very romantic reason. It's like, oh, honey, you are so close to me that I'm going to ignore you just like I would ignore me.
Yeah.
And so typically they don't make good accountability partners. And this can often cause a lot of confusion, because I remember somebody saying to me, I'm so angry. What does this mean about our relationship? I've been telling my husband for 2 years, he had to get into better shape. He had to go to the doctor. He's in terrible physical condition. He ignored me. And then yesterday his boss walks into the office and says, Paul, we got a lot of big things coming up. You got to get yourself in shape, get to a doctor, get yourself exercising. And now my husband's doing all these things. Like, he doesn't care about me. And I'm like, no, it's because he's an obliger. And an obliger, a boss, that's an outer expectation. But a spouse is too close. It doesn't. Yeah. So it's very easy that you could be ignoring your wife's expectations, but still feel like you're an obliger.
And I wonder if these traits are nurture or nature, because I think of my dad. Nature, right?
Nature. I think they're hardwired. I really do. You can see them in very young children.
Yeah. I mean, so I think of my dad. My dad was a film composer, very successful in New York and LA. And it was really interesting. He was really good when he had like movies that he was working on, right? But he always dreamt of like, doing symphonies and ballets and Broadway shows. But these were things that he would have had to kind of do on his own. He needed somebody to tell him, do this, Michael, and it's due in 4 weeks, right? And I'm the same way. Like, I mean, to a degree, like I think I've actually tried to fight this in tendency. For example, the Anxiety Project, that was just, there was nobody telling me to do that. There was no agent that came to me and said, "Hey, we want you to write a book on Zig." That idea came to me. I wanted to do it. I wanted to have a book out there, and I
Wait,
certainly
can I offer a suggestion
Yes,
though?
please do.
Do you think that maybe you decided to write the book in order to create accountability for you to do all those things to try to tackle your anxiety?
Damn it, Gretchen, you're good. That is it. That's probably it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And
because
also
often,
to get the approval of the outside world that I have a book, right? Like there's definitely something
Sure.
there,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
It wasn't like I want to have a book for myself. It was like I want to have a book, but I also kind of want to have a book because it gives me a certain status in the world, in like profession in the world, et cetera. So
Sure.
there's those two things.
Sure.
But yeah, no, you're right. I think I knew that it would create an accountability, and then of course, having an agent and an editor, they would give
Yes.
me a structure. The
Yeah.
hardest part about that was before I had the agent and all the people helping me on it, because then it was just me having to tell myself to do this every day. And I think this is something that a lot of writers and creative people struggle with. I wonder if a lot of writers are obligers, that it's really hard to sit down at a desk and start writing without some sort of external motivation.
No, this is a huge issue. And I think a lot of times people who think that they have writer's block actually don't have writer's block. They're just obligers who have like kicked themselves free of accountability. For instance, a pattern that I see a lot of time is somebody will be a journalist and then they go on book leave or they quit their journalism job to go freelance or something. And then all of a sudden they're paralyzed and they think that it's all these things going on. And I'm like, no. It's like you had an editor, you had deadlines, you had, you were part of a system that was putting that accountability on you. And now you're just in a free space. And so what you need to do is create accountability. And I remember a friend of mine who was an obliger. She actually said to her agent, I'm a person, she didn't know the word obliger, but she was like, I'm a person who needs deadlines. I need you to create deadlines for me. Make them up. Just don't tell me they're fake and hold me accountable to them. And the agent, thinking that she was being helpful, was like, oh, no, you're great. Like, it'll come. I have faith in you. And then this person ended up writing an entire memoir in like 2.5 months, right before the catalog came out. And she was very upset because she's like, I could have done a better job, but I just couldn't get myself to start until there was really a deadline looming. Whereas if the agent had known about this framework, they could have said said, let's do it. I expect a chapter every month and I'm going to send you an email and my assistant's going to chase you down and you can work it out to create it. But then on the other hand, it can be exactly counterproductive. So if you're a rebel, you might exactly find it like you might resist doing your writing if you feel like you've got an editor asking for it or an agent nagging you, or even just the idea that you have a pub date that you have to work toward. I know somebody who was writing a nonfiction book and he wrote the whole thing before he tried to sell it. And I said, that's unconventional. Why did you do that? And he said, because I know I wanted to write a book because I felt like writing a book. I had a lot to say and I like writing. And so I thought, I'm going to write a book for fun. But then once I wrote the book, I'm like, this book is great. I want this book to be out in the world. I want to get paid for this book. And so then I got an agent and then I got an editor and the book got published. But he knew himself because he's like, some people need those deadlines. He's like, those deadlines will make me bonkers. I won't write the book if I feel like I have those deadlines.
Can't imagine being that person. That's so cool.
But that's the thing. Well, rebel is the smallest tendency. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of times we don't understand like how trying to be helpful, you could actually get in the way of a rebel. You're better with a rebel just being like, hey, you got this, do it in your own way. I know you're going to knock my socks off at the end. And then as an upholder, I realized like upholders don't really need that much accountability. Like it's not that hard for me to just be like, oh, okay, now I'm gonna write a book about the empty nest, and I'm like, I'm gonna write a book about the empty nest, and I'm like well underway with that book, and I haven't sold it yet or anything because I'm like, well, I really want to have a clearer sense of like exactly what my argument is before I like start like writing a proposal for it and everything. But I'm like, but I don't worry about that because as an upholder, I'm like, I like that's fine. It doesn't matter to me. But now I know that about myself, So
Is that the book you're working on now, An Empty Nester?
That's what I'm going to work on now.
That's
Project
such a
Empty
great
Nest.
idea.
Yeah,
That's really
thank
good.
you. Yeah, I'm really interested in it.
Are you Generation X?
I
You are,
am.
right?
Yeah.
I've been recently on Substack, and I've been for 3 years. I've been kind of writing, about writing, and I suddenly started to write about Gen X issues and like stuff that really applies. I'm Generation X as well, to our generation. I have found a tremendous response to this, and I feel like like all of a sudden my post, as
Ooh,
opposed to getting 10 things, are
I'm
getting
writing that
1,000.
down.
It's called small talk. Thank you, Greg.
Okay.
It's called small talk, but emptiness. I want to bring you back when you do the book
Yeah.
about emptiness, because that is such an issue that we're dealing with. Now, my kids are a little bit young. Well, I have a son that's 19 that's in college in London, and then I have a daughter who's in freshman in high school. So I still have 4 years, or probably 3.5, 3 years.
Yeah.
But it's coming, and most of my friends are empty nesters, or about to be there. So very big issue. Anyway,
But that's a great suggestion. And this is like, here's a little tip for writers out there, which is this is an angle that I hadn't considered. The idea, like, this is actually a generational thing, and the Generation X is now experiencing this. And so that's like a way to talk about the book in a way that I hadn't thought of. So
oh, cool.
I'm going to write that down, because in a week I will have forgotten it, but then flash forward to when I'm like, what are the hooks for this book? Or like, who can I connect with? That's like, maybe there's a Generation X angle here, and so that's really
Well,
really helpful.
Well, this is thank you. I'm glad that you to help you, and you've helped me certainly a lot in your career. Let's seg now to your book, Secrets of Adulthood, because this is a good segue, because this is also an issue that I think a lot of Gen Xers are dealing with, is like giving your children really good life advice that you kind of maybe wish you got, or that you just gleaned over the years. And frankly, it's hard to think about advice to give your kids. And also they're not always so receptive to it, right? I always feel like our kids learn so much from their peers, right? And like when I try to like have the talk with my son or whatever, they're kind of like a little bit eye rolly.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about the genesis of why you decided to write this book.
Well, exactly. As you say, I had these two girls going out into the world, and I wanted to write down some of the lessons that I had learned the hard way through time and experience, like to try to save them from some of my suffering.
Yep.
But then I wanted to remind myself of them just as much, because I feel like I'm learning the same lessons over and over and over. For instance, with writing, working is one of the most dangerous forms of procrastination, right? Like, how often do I do research when I'm like, that is not original writing. I have a friend who is like, I've been thinking about fonts, and I'm like, let me jump in right now and tell you, you are not working. You are, you're screwing around. So part of it was to capture these lessons, and then I have always loved the literary form of the aphorism. This is an ancient literary form. It's when you have you have an observation about human nature, and you try to really crystallize it into a sentence or two. I love them all: La Rochefoucauld, Montaigne, Samuel Johnson, Oscar Wilde. Warren Buffett is an amazing aphorist.
Really?
Marie von Ibn Eschenbach is my favorite aphorist. Nobody remembers her now. She was a 19th century Austrian aphorist.
I didn't even know there was a term, aphorist. What a great term. Okay.
Yeah, well, nobody knows what an aphorism is. So that's why I did not call the book Aphorisms. And the word aphorism does not appear in the subtitle, because nobody knows what an aphorism is. But an aphorism is basically just like a short observation about human nature that's attributed to a person. So that's different from a proverb, like a stumble may prevent a fall, or, here's one of my favorites: sailors fear fire more than water. It's like, okay, what do you make of that? So anyway, that's a proverb.
Yeah.
And as I was writing my books, particularly starting with the Happiness Project probably, but then increasingly over time, I was really trying to, when I had a big idea, I was really trying to see if I could crystallize it into just like a single sentence, because that is really the truest test. Here's an aphorism: the truest test of a man's intelligence is his ability to make a summary. That's from Lytton Strachey. And there really is something about, like, you really have to push your thinking to absolute clarity in order to really express it in a very brief way.
This is so true. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I tell my writing students this sometimes, that if you can't distill your story idea into a one sentence, then you probably don't have a good story idea. It's same with like a television show idea or a log line for a movie.
Yes.
Etc. So
it's a discipline. It's
It's so
It's a
hard to do.
real discipline. You know,
Yeah.
it's funny, just as a side note, for people who love to read, there's a wonderful podcast called Backlisted where they read backlist books and talk about them. I love it, love it, love it. But
Yeah.
one of the things that they often do, because they're book professionals, is they will take a book that was written like in 1950, often that has been republished, and they'll read the summary of the book and they'll talk about, does this summary like make you want to read the book? Does it accurately characterize the
Interesting.
book? And sometimes they'll have like 2 or 3 different versions like over time, and it is fascinating because you're like, wow, like
Yeah.
I wouldn't have said that about The Great Gatsby or whatever.
This is often the hardest type of writing to do, by the way.
Oh,
So the fact that you,
immensely difficult.
I mean,
Immensely
the
difficult.
short, it's counterintuitive, right? But the shorter the writing, the much, much, much harder. I mean, even
Well,
when
this is the old joke. I'm sorry I wrote you such a long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one.
that's great. Totally perfect.
Yeah.
So I admire that you did this because I can't even imagine. I don't even think I could write one aphorism, and you've written, what is it, hundreds in here?
Yeah.
Not hundreds, but a lot, many,
200,
many.
yeah.
200. Wow.
Yeah.
So kudos to you for that. So we should probably talk about a few. I'm curious, now the book is out in the world, you've gotten some feedback, right? And I'm curious, like,
Yes.
you never know what is going to resonate with people,
So true.
right? So I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, some of the ones that might have surprised you that seem to be resonating.
Yes, I know, and you're exactly right. Like that's part of what's so fascinating is like what's going to strike a chord with other people
Right.
because you never know with your own book what is going to strike a chord. Well, one of them that a lot of people have mentioned to me is the secret of adulthood, that we care for many people we don't particularly care for.
Explain. Let's go a little deeper into that. So what does
Well,
that
don't
mean?
you care for some people that you don't particularly care for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the obliger in me probably is wanting to to people to like me or whatever to I don't know, to the external, wanting external good feedback. But I care for people I don't
But
particularly
it's
care
like
for.
in people in your family where you're like, I
Yeah.
don't particularly care for that person, but you deeply care for them.
Yeah, I
So
see
both
what you
things,
mean.
yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah,
Another
for sure.
Another one that is funny that I didn't think that a lot of people would pick up on because to me it was like more sort of a fun one. It was like, remember that like sleeping with a big dog in a small bed, things that are uncomfortable can also be comforting. For some reason that kind of like catches people's fancy.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One is what are some other ones that people always talk about? This is funny because I wrote this in my book Better Than Before that's all about habit change. And to me, this didn't even feel like an aphorism. It just felt like kind of just like an obvious fact that I just sort of wrote as just a transition. It wasn't like, oh, this is a big insight to me, but many, many, many people are like, oh my gosh, this like blew my mind, which is what we do every day matters more than what we do once in a while. And it works both ways. Like if you are basically writing every single day, it doesn't matter if you miss a week for spring break because what we do every day matters more than what we do once in a while. On the other hand, if you basically never write and then once a month you sit down and you write for 5 hours, it's not really going to matter because what we do every day matters more than what we do once in a while. So it can be reassuring or threatening depending on what angle you're looking at it from. But to me, that was just like, yeah.
That's
But-
obvious, right? But people, but I think that's great. I can see why that would resonate. It's kind of freeing to know that.
Yeah.
It puts a lot less pressure on yourself.
Well, it's just the long game we've all got to just be thinking about like, what does the average day look like? Like, let's think about that, not the extraordinary, the like rare and extraordinary effort.
All right, before I want to get back to a few of these because I want to certainly tell you some of the ones that really resonate
Ooh,
with me.
that's what I want to hear is which one.
Yeah,
struck
exactly.
you.
I want to talk about a little bit though about the process of coming up with these aphorisms because I can't imagine just sitting down in front of a computer and being like,
Yeah.
"Here we go."
No, you can't do that,
So how did it happen for you? Like, are you thinking these in the shower and then running out and being like, like what?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes, I have a giant document called One Sentence Aphorisms, and I write them down. And so again, like starting in the Happiness Project, been starting to do this more and more. So I like dumped in ones that I had already created for my books just to get me started. And then, so I often have a hooky book. This is my busman's holiday. So I'll be working on like my main project, and then on the side, I'll be working on another book. So like when I was writing Happier at Home, my hooky book was actually turned into the book Outer Order, Inner Calm. And when I was writing Better Than Before, my hooky book was turned into the Four Tendencies. And so, but then sometimes they don't turn into books. Like I wrote this, I went through this period of being absolutely preoccupied with color.
Yeah.
Just the subject of color. I was absolutely enthralled. And I wrote this book, which I love. It's a little short book called My Color Pilgrimage. I love this thing. I really polished it. It's, you know, and I've shown it to a few people and they're like, well, you really had fun with that, didn't you? You know, they're not excited about it. So I don't know. That may never see the light of day. So not all my hooky books actually turn into real books. But this, when I was writing Life in Five Senses, I started to think like, oh, maybe this could be not just something that I'm doing kind of like in the background as part of my regular note taking, but really as a standalone project. And so then like you say, like I was constantly thinking about them and like and trying to hone them. They took so much editing, but then when I ended up with a lot. And what I realized is I wanted there to be some kind of like aim for the book, like some kind of reason for the book. And so I thought, well, I'll pick the ones that are secrets of adulthood, where there really is some kind of lesson for making decisions, dealing with relationships, getting yourself to like do something, like where you could say like, this is a secret of adulthood. Like something that's done, something that can be done at any time is often done at no time. That's a secret of adulthood. But then I had some that were just what I would call mere observations. Like a dog doesn't gaze at a waterfall.
Yeah.
It's true a dog doesn't gaze at a waterfall. That's a mere observation. And then I have a lot of dark aphorisms. These are the bleak aphorisms that are like judgmental
Let
or
me hear
super
one.
pessimistic.
Yeah. Do you remember one off?
Yeah. Like one of them is praise is a form of judgment. Encouragement can be an attempt to control.
Interesting. That is true. You have to think about it.
How do we judge those who courageously overcome obstacles that they've put in their own way?
I love
This
that.
is pretty
These
dark.
are good. It's not, yeah, they're dark. Not everything has to be like upbeat. Of course, the ones I like are all like really happy. But, and I want to get to those. But another question comes to me, and I think this will come to a lot of parents out there listening to this. It's like, how do you give your kids advice? You know, I always am jealous when I hear somebody interviewed and they're like, my dad used to always say to me, you know, and it's some aphorism, right? Or some saying. And I'm like, is my kid, and when he's interviewed, going to be like, yeah, my dad used to always say, you know, I can't even think of, my dad was a very wise man, but I can't think of anything that he would say to me all the time. And maybe it's like a Southern thing. Like I feel like a lot of Southerners had expressions and I don't know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my dad once said to me, and it meant, something that meant a lot to him was your best is good enough. That was something that had come to him at one point.
Well, that's good. I like that.
Your best is good enough, because I think he was always feeling like he was some sort of an anti-perfectionism kind of message there. And I think as a creative person, he was always feeling like he could do it a little bit better. He could do it a little better, and he'd always put a lot of pressure on himself.
I love that. That's really great. You see, you could write it down. Like there's the space in the back of the book so that you can write down
some of the things your dad said.
Like that you're, and then that's kind of a great keepsake.
My mom probably has some good ones too. But anyway,
I bet there are more when you start thinking about it. It's kind of hard to pull up that index card, you know, but they drift through your mind.
Right. So, but what is this is wonderful that you can give your children this book. But if you're just
I think they feel like innocent bystanders, to be clear. Like, they're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, thanks, Mom.
All this coming at me. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What is there a way to sort of sit a kid down and give them advice? Like,
well,
you know,
it's so funny that you say that, because so my husband and I were driving my younger daughter up to college, right? So like we've got the car packed up and like we're driving there. We're like an hour outside of town. And I don't know what came over us, but all of a sudden we just started like unloading every piece, like, you know, manage your budget and like get enough sleep and, you know, don't forget to exercise. And it's important to be nice to everyone. And like, it was just all pouring out of us. And then finally my husband, like in all seriousness, is like, just remember to take advantage of every opportunity that college offers. And then we just burst out laughing, right? It was so silly because, of course, by then it's far too late.
Yeah.
And when it comes to children, our example is far more persuasive than any kind of instruction that we would give. But I do think that there are times where like you can say something in a way that really like resonates with somebody, or there's something that you repeat often enough that like they kind of get it, or they just like you're like you see that it's meaningful to somebody else, and that makes it meaningful to you.
Yeah.
So I asked my daughter, well, on the day that the book came out, my older daughter texted me, "My secret of adulthood is to have you on my team," which I thought was very sweet.
Yeah.
But then I asked them, like, which of my secrets of adulthood do you think you think about the most, or has been the most useful? My older daughter said, the secret of adulthood, you're unique just like everybody else. Because she said it comforts her to think like, I'm my own individual special person, but I'm also not that different from other people. Like it's good to have that tension in your mind, that paradox.
Right.
And then my other daughter said, don't expect to be motivated by motivation was the one that she thought of a lot.
I like that one. I definitely had that one on my list. That's
well,
a good...
because as an obligers often think if they work themselves, they think, why am I not getting these things done? I must not want it enough. And upholders, questioners, and rebels will say, get clear on what you want, and then you'll do it. And obligers are like, okay, I'll just do that. And it doesn't work for them.
No.
Because motivation doesn't work. Yeah,
No,
don't expect to be motivated by motivation. Yeah,
I don't like motivation. I mean, it's just not. It doesn't work.
I don't even really believe in it. I think it's a concept that's very confusing. Anyway, yes, we digress.
Yeah.
But that is the secret of adulthood. Yeah, don't expect to be motivated by motivation.
I love that. Yeah, one of the things that I wrote down here: there is no right way to create a happier life, just as there is no best way to cook an egg.
Yes.
And I love that because being a magazine writer for many years, I was actually an advice columnist when I worked at Glamour. I used to write this advice column called
Fun.
Jake. And I always felt a little guilty with that because I would be giving advice, but realize that there's no one piece of advice that works for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And so I think you need to know that going into life, that what might be good advice for one person is not good for you, and that can be in any regard, whether
I just couldn't agree more. I think that's so important, and I think people just don't understand it. They think there's a best way. They think there's a right way. They think there's a most efficient way. They think if it works for me, it'll work for you, and if it doesn't work for you, you're doing it wrong. Or they think it works for you. What's wrong with me? It doesn't work for me. I must be lazy. I have no willpower. Yeah. What's wrong with me? Instead of being like, another one of my secrets of adulthood is no tool fits every hand. Like I'm somebody, I have tried and given up meditation 3 times. I went on a silent meditation retreat.
Yes.
I've done it for months, and I'm like, it's not a tool that works for me. And people are like, you just need to meditate more. And I'm like, no, I'm just telling you, it doesn't work for me. And that's fine, because now I have more time to do the things that do work for me.
Do work for you.
I don't spend the time being like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I meditate? It doesn't work for me.
All right, I'm so happy to hear this, because it's exactly the same with me. And I can't tell you, people have told me, have you found mindfulness? You'll love mindfulness. You got to do mindfulness, or you got to smoke more pot. You're just not smoking the right kind of pot. I'm like, no, pot doesn't work for me. Like, I don't like pot. Like, it's not.
No, but I think you're exactly right. Instead of spending the time thinking, well, what am I like? What works for me? What has worked for me in the past? What hasn't worked for me in the past? Let me get clear on myself. We often are looking around and being like, well, I'll model myself after this person, or I'll tell this person they should do it this way. And instead of realizing, like, your mileage may differ. This is, I think this, and so a lot of what I've written is about really trying to help people understand, like, are you a book person or a tree person? Are you an abundance lover or a simplicity lover? Are you a movie person or a snapshot person? Are you a moderator or an abstainer? Are you a simplicity lover or an abundance lover? Are you a marathoner or a finisher, or a sprinter or a finisher or an opener? Like, I get a bazillion of these because I do think it's very helpful sometimes just to have these crude categories so that people can be like, oh, I didn't realize like that's a thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like that. Yeah.
I think it's very helpful to name the thing. Like, even when I was having, when I was having a lot of the reason I kind of got interested in his anxiety is because I was having one of these kind of physical manifestations of my anxiety. It was a while ago. And I went to a therapist, and he's like, you have generalized anxiety disorder. And I was like, what? Like, that's a thing? And the fact that he just was able to name it.
Where you're like, I thought that was the human condition.
Yeah,
I
just
like,
thought that was
I've got
me
more of
being
this
alive.
than other people.
Yeah, exactly. Like, other people have this thing. And then it's I went and read about it, and I was like, people don't like ambiguity. They want to know that. And it's very helpful, I think, but not everybody is the same. All right, so that's a really good one. I have a few other on the happiness tip. One of the best ways to make yourself happy is to make others happy. That's a really good. One of the best ways to make others happy is to be happy yourself.
Yes, when I was writing about happiness at first for the Happiness Project, I was very, very confused. I was very caught because I couldn't figure out which was true.
Yeah.
But then I realized that both are true. One of the best ways to make yourself happy is to make other people happy. That's one of the nicest parts about human nature. But one of the best ways to make other people is to be happy yourself. And that's very true. We like infect each other with our moods. Happy people tend to make people happier. Happier people like have better habits and they're better team members and better leaders. Being happy yourself like really does give you the emotional wherewithal to turn outward and to think about other people. So they're both true. But it took me a very, very long time to understand that truth.
It's a profound truth. Okay, we can change our lives without changing ourselves.
Yes. Okay. So often with these secrets of adulthood, there is a story, an anecdote, something that got me thinking. Like often I was just like trying to like turn something over in my mind, trying to make sense of it. It seemed significant to me, but I didn't really know why or how. So what happened to me here is I was like up on stage being interviewed by a journalist. And this was about my habit book, Better Than Before. And she said to me, well, what I want to do is I want to be the kind of person who gets up in the morning and really wants to go for a 5-mile run instead of being the person that I am who like really never exercises. And to me, this was an incredibly poignant question. And I realized later it's because she was like, I want to be a different person. And I'm like, I don't think you can become a different person like that. I don't think you can decide to become the kind of person who wants to get up and run 5 miles. Now, if you said to me, hey, I want to get in shape, can I do that? Hey, I want to exercise consistently, can I do that? Hey, I want to be able to run 5 miles when I choose to, can I do that? I would be like 100%. I have so many strategies for you. There's so many ways that's so attainable. You can do it in the way that's right for you and you can achieve those aims. But can you transform yourself into the kind of person who effortlessly wants to do that?
Yeah.
Well, that's a very different thing. And I think it's just kind of also, it's a kind of complacency where it's like, well, if I can't be the kind of person who just loves to get up and run, well, I'm just not going to do it. It's like,
Yeah.
but a lot of people get up and run who aren't the kind of people who love to get up and run, but they do it for other reasons. And so you can change your life without having to change yourself.
You don't have to change. And it's kind of nice to know that you don't have to completely change who you are, because who you are is fine, but you can change some of your habits, right?
And back to the 4 tendencies, a lot of times people will say, well, I don't want to be this tendency, I want to be that tendency. And I'm like, well, they're all good. They all have strengths and weaknesses. And so it's really like, how do you achieve what you want to achieve for yourself in the way that's right for you, instead of like wishing that you were a completely different category of person.
Do you think you can change your personality trait? Like, do you think you can become an obliger, can become a rebel? No, because you're you're hardwired a certain way, and that's
I will say I think for the vast majority of people that's true, and that you're one throughout your whole life. But I will say that in my observation, there are these rare group of people where they've had some kind of massive personality upheaval in their life. So either they've like recovered from a huge struggle with addiction, or they're on some kind of medication that has like profoundly personality changing effects, or they've had a near-death experience, something like that. Then they kind of exit the framework of the 4 tendencies. And I haven't been able to like see enough of them and observe them enough to know where they go. To me, to my observation, their pattern seems kind of chaotic. It doesn't fit into a neat pattern, but that is very, very unusual. But sometimes people will say, well, I used to be an obliger, but now I'm an upholder. And I'm like, okay, let's look at that, because probably what you've done is you've sort of unconsciously realized that you need outer accountability to do anything important to you. And so you've created a way so that everything that's important to you has outer accountability. And so you feel like an upholder, but I'm like, no, from an upholder standpoint, you're still using outer accountability, which is fine. That's exactly what a person should do. But they haven't really changed category.
Yeah, I think it's so hard to change. And why do it? I don't know.
Why do it? Why do it?
Why
get where you want to go. You get what you get, and you don't get upset. That's a proverb that we tell our children.
Well, that's a good. We get what you get when you don't get upset like that. Oh man. All right. Okay. Only a few more. I'll let you go. This one's great because I feel like this one is very something I tell my kids in different ways. And it's also, well, let me read it first. What we believe is most important isn't always what becomes most important.
Yeah. Oh, you got to read the examples. The examples are so delicious.
Give me an example. Okay. So
No, just read them. Yeah.
So did I give you? Do I have in front? I don't have it in front of me. The example.
Okay. Then I'll just say it. So most of the secrets of adulthood just are just like a sentence or two, but sometimes the examples were so amazing I couldn't resist. So here it's like, this explorer goes over to the new world and brings back like this and that and this and that, and the most valuable thing they brought back was the potato.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I love those. Yeah. And it's a very good lesson. It's something that I learned when I was doing this Origin Stories book is that what people kind of go in, what they sort of think is going to be the most important thing or the thing that's going to be the most defining thing in their career ends up being something completely different. What their legacy is or what actually ends up making them successful. And I think you can't sort of manage like your life. It just like life happens and you have to be open to the fact that it might go in a different direction.
Well,
right?
and I'll tell you a perfect example of exactly that. One of the things that's kind of idiosyncratic about me is I love children's literature and young adult literature. Like I read it as an adult. And
that's great.
One of the things that's very striking is how many people who I think would have been astonished to realize that they are only now remembered as these great artists because of what they did for children. So you take someone like E.B. White, someone like C.S. Lewis, someone like J.R.R. Tolkien, someone like, what's Barry's first name? Who wrote Peter Pan? Barry.
Barry. Barry.
No.
God, B-A-R-R.
Gosh, B-A-R-R-I-E. Gosh.
Yeah.
I know it like the back of my hand. I can't believe I just blanked out on that.
I just had to. James Matthew Barry. Peter.
J.M. Barry. J.M. Barry.
J.M. Barry. Yep.
J.M. Barry. Lewis Carroll. Lewis Carroll was this renowned mathematics professor. C.S. Lewis was this incredible medievalist. E.B. White was like writing all these like New Yorker profiles, know, and the idea that E.B. White, Charlotte's Web is going to be the thing that you're remembered for. Like Narnia is going to be way bigger than anything that you ever dreamed of. Or, you're right. You don't always know. You don't know.
Prejudge yourself and say, "Oh, that's lesser," because some might say that children's books. Like, I'll start with children's books and then I'll move into adult. No, your children's book might be your legacy. Yeah, such good wisdom. Gretchen Rubin, this has been just a thrill to talk to you. I love talking to you. And the book is available anywhere you can get books.
Yes.
And again, for you Gen Xers listening, and not just exclusively Gen Xers, I think there's a lot of wisdom here to sort of impart on your children, and even if you don't actually tell it to them verbally, just to know it in your soul is I think helpful.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been hearing like people now like they'll pull it out of the dinner table and they read a few aloud and then like debate. So I love that.
Really? That's
I love
great.
That. Yeah,
that's
that'd be
cool.
fun. Yeah, it's a great way to connect about kind of secrets of adulthood.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed this conversation so much.
Me too. You're awesome. Where do you live in New York?
The Upper East Side.
Yeah, my mom is on 65th and 3rd. So
I used to live at 69th and 3rd.
Okay. Yeah, I know the area well. That's really fun.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, to be continued. I will keep following your stuff. Yeah, I would love it. Check out Small Talk. I will.
I wrote it down. Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
thank you. There was an article that the New York Times, I don't know if you saw it. They ran an article. It was called "The End of the World as They Knew It," and it was all about how like people in our generation are completely lost because we came up as magazine editors or whatever. A lot of the creative people, right? And then.
Have you read Catastrophe Hour by Megan Daum? I just started it, and that is like literally her opening thing, which is, I came up in a world that is now gone. Like I was a journalist.
So it's all about that. Right. And so I agree with that premise, but then the article was kind of about how like we're in trouble and like we're like, there's all these
we're
like
forgotten, right? Wasn't it sort of like
So I wrote this kind of angry response saying like, we're the latchkey kids and and it was just like, just put it out there, and then all of a sudden it's like thousands of comments, and I'm like, what the heck? Like it just struck a nerve, and so now I've kind of been writing a lot of stuff about that. So it's been interesting.
That's interesting.
You never know. Again, it's like
Somebody described themselves as like a feral child of the 80s. I was like, that's very funny. But
Yeah.
yeah, everything is a response to everything is a reaction. Like the way that we're parents, is that a reaction to the way that we were parented? Like how do all these things
Right.
swing back and forth? It's so fascinating.
It is interesting. Yeah, like I was very much responding to the way my mom as a silent generationer was, yeah, kind of, yeah, and how we become helicopter parents because we were sort of let kind of on our own, right? Like left like little feral animals. Yeah.
Yeah,
Out
people
of
are
sight,
like,
out of
I
mind
probably
kind of
should have
thing.
had more supervision,
Yeah, exactly. And now it's too much.
and now
Anyway,
it's too much. Everything
now it's
goes
too
too
much.
far.
All
Excellent.
right.
Well, I'm going to sign up now. I love Substack.
Oh,
Okay.
you're awesome. Okay, thanks,
Excellent.
Gretchen. I'll talk to you
Thanks so
soon.
much.